Welcome to today's deep dive. We are really thrilled to have you with us because today we are looking at a truly fascinating stack of conceptual notes and framework documents.
Yeah, it's a really dense but amazing collection.
It really is. And just to give you, the listener, an idea of what we're dealing with, our sources today are heavily focused on sociological frameworks. So we've got a set of behavioral economics notes labeled GOA-48,
Yeah.
and then this organizational behavior model called the membrane contact phase, or MCP, and finally the systems architecture paper known as the LMOS framework.
Which is just a brilliant piece of work. But right out of the gate, I think it is vital to set the parameters for what we are actually doing with these papers today.
Yeah, definitely.
Because we are not doing a financial market commentary. Like, we aren't here to give you investment advice or, predict stock prices or tell you which tech giant is going to win the decade.
Right, please don't take any of this as investment advice.
Exactly. Instead, we are going to use the current, just immense wave of AI investments as a sort of doorway. It's a highly visible entry point to explore this largely unseen shift in how our entire world operates.
How we project the future, basically.
Yes, how we project it and fundamentally how human society synchronizes itself to that projected future.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to navigate a shift this profound, I want you to keep one central question in the back of your mind throughout our whole conversation today. It's the core question running through those GOA-48 behavioral notes.
That's a great question.
Just 6 words, really. What exactly is the market pricing?
And that is the defining question of these documents. I mean, let's start with the observable reality, right? The raw data that's outlined in the GOA-48 notes. Right now, there is an absolute explosion of capital flowing into AI.
Unbelievable amounts of money.
Oh, yeah. But this isn't just, software development or some code being written in a dorm room. The money is flowing into heavy physical realities.
Right, like concrete and steel.
Exactly. We are talking about retrofitting entire national power grids, securing land rights, the relentless construction of just enormous data centers. The user numbers for these technologies are skyrocketing, and the corporate valuations attached to them are, well, astronomical.
And this is a rather glaring point, the sources highlight the actual profit structures behind these physical build-outs. They're still completely immature.
Yeah, they really are.
Like, the revenue these models are generating right now doesn't even come close to matching the capital expenditures required to, build and run them. The money is flowing in way before the profits have actually materialized on the balance sheets.
Which tells us something deeply structural about human behavior right now. The market isn't reacting to reality. It is reacting to the future.
Well, wait,
Now, I know the common pushback is that, markets always react to the future.
Right.
They're forward-looking mechanisms.
Right, that's what they do.
But the GOA-48 notes point out that the time horizon has fundamentally shifted. Past markets, they evaluated corporate value based on quarterly earnings or annual reports or, standard business cycles of maybe 3 to 5 years.
Standard stuff, yeah.
Today, the money flowing into this infrastructure is heavily based on premises that are 5, 10, or even 15 years out.
Wait, I need to stop you there. Because looking at this objectively, how is this different from any standard investment bubble?
That's a very fair question.
We saw this with the dot-com boom. We saw it with housing, crypto. Companies always say, oh, we are building the future, as a convenient excuse for why they aren't making money today. Isn't this just like irrational exuberance, just throwing trillions at a wall and hoping some of it sticks?
What's fascinating here is that the GOA-48 authors specifically argue against that bubble comparison.
Really? They don't think it's a bubble.
No, because a bubble usually implies a detachment from reality that's fueled by current hysteria, like buying a stock just because it went up yesterday. What is happening with this AI infrastructure build-out is different. The market is deliberately extending the timeline of its expectations.
Extending the timeline.
Right. It is pricing a distant future premise, not evaluating a current tangible reality. It isn't a bubble of, hysteria. It's a hardened, calculated commitment. They are laying down this massive highway in the desert, not because they are confused about where the cars are today, but because they have hardened the expectation that the city will definitely be there decades from now.
I hear what you're saying, but extending a timeline just feels like a very sophisticated way of saying, we promise we'll figure out the business model later.
It does sound like that, I admit. But the distinction lies in the physical world.
How do you mean?
Well, a software bubble can pop overnight because the underlying assets are mostly just code and, speculation. But when you sign a 20-year contract for nuclear energy to power a data center, you are no longer just speculating. You are locking in physical reality based on a future expectation.
Wow. Yeah, that is a huge difference. And that leads us to a complete reversal of how humanity has historically operated, which the sources outline beautifully, by the way. Let's look at the traditional sequence of how we usually interact with the world.
Right, the old model.
It's a three-step process: observation, then judgment, then expectation. So you observe reality. Say you watch a local bakery sell out of bread every morning. You judge that data. You determine, okay, their recipes are great and demand is high.
Makes sense.
And then, based on that empirical judgment, you form an expectation about the future. Like, this bakery will grow, so maybe I'll invest in a second oven for them. Observation, judgment, expectation. It's safe, it's empirical.
And it is completely flipped in our current paradigm. The GOA-48 notes argue that we have shifted to a sequence of expectation, followed by judgment.
Expectation first.
Exactly. People aren't investing billions into AI infrastructure because they have judged that the current iterations are generating sustainable profits today. They were investing because the expectation of future dominance is already set as a foundational truth.
It's treated as a given.
Yes. And because they are investing those billions, society is essentially forced to build the premise that those profits will inevitably appear. The expectation comes first, and the judgment is retroactively arranged to support it.
I was trying to wrap my head around this reversal earlier, and it's almost like buying an incredibly expensive, tailored suit for this CEO job you haven't even applied for yet.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right. And because you bought the suit, you retroactively rearrange your entire life, your education, your daily habits, all just to justify that initial purchase. The action is justified by a future that doesn't exist yet.
That is a highly accurate way to visualize it. The expectation is capitalized first. The suit is bought, or the billions are invested in server farms. And the judgment, the literal reshaping of the physical and social world, is arranged afterward to support that initial massive expenditure. The fundamental order of reality has flipped.
We are actively justifying the future we already paid for.
Exactly.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting, because this isn't just about Wall Street, hedge funds, or tech CEOs moving numbers around on a screen.
Yeah.
Society itself is sinking to this expectation.
Oh, absolutely.
The pressure of that money bleeds out of the financial sector and starts pulling on, your everyday life.
And this is where we bring in the LMOS frameworks. LMOS stands for Large-Scale Societal Operational System. And what these sociological notes outline is that it's not just tech companies moving toward this expected future. The entire operational system of human society is being dragged along with it.
Right. And just to be clear, when we say operational system, we aren't talking about iOS or a computer operating system.
No.
The LMOS papers are talking about the invisible architecture of human civilization.
The systems that run our daily world. We're talking education curriculums, labor markets, urban planning, government policy. The LMOS authors point out that these institutions are all currently adapting to the expectation of an AI-driven future.
They're changing their behavior today.
Right. The fundamental question isn't whether AI will achieve everything it promises. The reality is that the actual structure of society is rebuilding itself on the premise that it will. In this framework, expectation acts as a gradient.
A gradient, like a hill or a gravitational pull.
Yes, exactly. Think of it like potential energy in physics.
Yeah.
When trillions of dollars are piled onto a specific vision of the future, it creates a massive gravitational field. It creates a vacuum.
So it pulls things in.
Yeah. A university doesn't change its computer science curriculum because it's, philosophically inspired. It changes it because the market valuation of AI companies is so high that graduates demand the skills to get those salaries.
Right. The money creates the pressure.
Exactly. The money creates a pressure gradient that pulls the university's behavior toward the expected future.
So let me put this directly to you and to the listener. Are we predicting the future here, or are we actively building it in advance just because the gravity of the capital is forcing our hand?
Well, the LMOS framework would argue we are building it through compulsion.
Compulsion. Wow.
In this reversed structure, expectation doesn't just passively sit there anticipating reality. It actively drags reality along with it. When that much capital says the future looks a certain way, the physical world almost has no choice but to bend to accommodate it.
But there is a glaring problem with trying to bend physical reality like that. It creates an incredible amount of friction.
Massive friction.
because we don't live in a spreadsheet. And the sources point out this severe speed gap in how our world operates. On one hand, we have this world of high-speed meaning. Financial markets, digital narratives, expectations. Money can move at the speed of light.
Yeah.
A sweeping assumption about the future of work can be priced into a stock in a millisecond.
But physical reality moves at a crawl. You can fund a data center in a day, sure, but securing the copper, laying the physical fiber optics, and building the nuclear power plant to run it, that takes a decade.
It's incredibly slow.
Right. You could declare that a workforce needs to be entirely upskilled by next year, but training human beings, rewiring human habits, and reorganizing corporate bureaucracy takes years of messy, slow wrangling. The LMOS notes introduce a critical concept here called speed and shear.
Speed and shear. I was trying to picture this mechanically while reading. If you have two layers of something moving at different speeds, like a fault line in an earthquake, you get shear.
Yes, in physics, shear stress is the tearing force that occurs when two parallel planes move past each other at different velocities.
Tearing force. That sounds intense.
It is, when the upper layer of financial expectation and digital narrative is traveling at light speed, but the foundational layer of physical reality, human life, concrete, daily routines is moving at a walking pace, you get severe structural friction. The society experiences shear.
It's like sitting in a high-performance sports car, but the chassis is sunk up to its axles in deep, thick mud.
Oh, that's a great image.
The driver, representing the financial market's expectation, is just slamming the gas pedal to the floor. The digital engine is screaming, spinning at 10,000 RPMs. The expectation is that we should be going 200 miles an hour down that 10-lane highway.
Right.
But the physical tires are just churning in the mud, barely inching forward. And what happens when you do that? The engine overheats, the gears grind, and the internal components of the car start to literally melt and warp from the friction.
And that warping brings us to the membrane contact phase models, or the MCP nodes. These are biological systems models adapted to analyze organizational and human behavior.
Right, the biological angle.
They provide a framework for understanding exactly what happens to human systems when they're subjected to that kind of societal shear. When organizations, hospitals, or societies are forced into high-efficiency synchronization with these light-speed expectations, but they're denied any time to recover.
And what happens to them?
They enter a state the notes call phase S3.5. Chronic depolarization.
Chronic depolarization. Let's break that down because it sounds highly clinical.
It is. It's borrowed directly from neurobiology. Think of a human nerve cell. When it receives a stimulus, it fires. That is called depolarization. It sends the signal.
Okay, got it.
But crucially, after it fires, it requires a fraction of a second to reset. It has to repolarize its chemical balance before it can fire again. This is called the refractory period.
It physically cannot function without that pause.
Right. It needs the pause. But if you force that nerve cell to fire constantly, overriding its ability to reset, it enters a state of chronic depolarization. It becomes exhausted, yet hypersensitive. It is a biological emergency state.
Wow.
The NCP notes apply this directly to human organizations. S3.5 isn't a state of total dramatic collapse where everyone just quits and the building burns down. It is much more insidious. It is a state of permanent, vibrating fatigue.
I want to make sure we ground this. What does chronic depolarization actually look like in, say, an office building or a hospital right now?
Well, imagine a healthcare system that just purchased a highly advanced predictive AI charting system. The financial expectation is hyper-efficiency, right? Doctors seeing twice as many patients because the software is supposedly handling all the administrative load.
Sounds great on paper.
Exactly. The software moves at light speed. But the physical realities, the human patients, the conversations, the slow process of drawing blood hasn't sped up at all.
Right, the mud.
The doctors and nurses are caught in the shear. They are constantly pinged by the system, expected to meet light speed metrics while dealing with slow physical reality. They are constantly firing, constantly reacting to microstimuli with a complete inability to step back and recover.
That can't reset.
No, they can't.
Yeah.
Their judgment horizons shorten. They stop planning for next year and just try to survive the next hour. That is a system trapped in S3.5, spinning at 10,000 RPMs in the mud.
Because they're trying to keep up with an expectation that was priced into the market a decade in advance. That is terrifying. So how does a society actually survive that level of friction?
It's the big question.
If we literally cannot speed up the physical reality of concrete and human biology, and we clearly aren't slowing down the financial markets, what prevents the engine from just completely exploding?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, The later version of the notes, MCP version 1.2, offers a profound structural answer. It states that the true health and longevity of a civilization is not found in rigid high-speed synchronization.
It's not about going faster.
No, it is not about achieving zero friction. True stability requires what the authors term fluctuation stability.
Fluctuation stability, meaning the system needs to possess a certain amount of give. It needs to, like, wobble.
Yes, exactly. Think
Yeah.
of it as liquid stability. It means intentionally allowing for local noise, diversity of thought, pockets of inefficiency, and just unstructured play.
Inefficiency as a feature, not a bug.
Precisely. A perfectly synchronized, hyper-efficient system where every second is optimized is actually incredibly brittle. One unexpected shock shatters it. What a society under severe shear needs is recovery capacity. And this leads to one of the most striking propositions in all the source material, which is regarding the concept of care.
Which caught me completely off guard when reading it. Because usually when we talk about care in a corporate or societal context, it's framed as an emotion.
Why, empathy.
Yeah, we think of empathy, kindness, HR wellness programs, charities, stuff like that.
But the MCP framework strips the emotion completely away and defines it purely as a structural necessity. It states, care is not an emotion, it is a repolarization infrastructure.
Let's hold on that phrase, a repolarization infrastructure.
Care is the systemic physical mechanism that allows the nerve cell to reset. It is the buffer, the unoptimized margin of error that allows a society to handle the sheer friction of differing speeds without entering permanent chronic depolarization.
If we go back to the sports car stuck in the mud, care isn't a bumper sticker about driving safely. Care is the radiator.
Yes, the radiator.
It's the cooling system. And think about how a radiator actually works. It literally pumps fluid away from the high-friction, explosive heat of the engine block. It moves that fluid into a wide, unoptimized grid with lots of surface area, exposing it to the ambient air so the heat can slowly dissipate.
Dissipating the heat.
And only once it has cooled down is it cycled back into the engine. If you decide to optimize your car by throwing away the radiator because it's heavy and doesn't directly make the wheels spin faster, your engine melts into a block of slag.
That is exactly the mechanistic function of care in the LMO's framework. Pumping human attention away from the high-stress friction zone into unoptimized, low-stakes environments dissipate cognitive heat. Fluctuation stability allows a civilization to absorb the immense shock of an expectation that is moving vastly faster than its physical reality.
So what does this all mean for us sitting here today? We have covered immense ground.
We really have.
We started by looking at the observable data, the billions of dollars flowing into AI infrastructure and data centers, despite a lack of current profits. And from there, we uncovered a fundamental rewiring of how our society experiences time and expectation.
The flipping of the sequence.
Right. We analyzed how the historical sequence of observing reality to form empirical expectations has flipped. Now, the market capitalizes the expectation first, and the gravity of that money forces human reality to retrofit itself to justify the cost.
And we saw the dangerous consequences of that flip, the severe structural shear between the light speed of financial premise and the slow, heavy reality of human institutions.
Phase S 3.5.
Exactly. We explored how this forces our organizations into chronic depolarization, a state of hypersensitive, permanent fatigue. And finally, we looked at how structural care and fluctuation aren't soft concepts, but the literal physical radiators required to cool the system down.
Which brings us to the most practical question. How do we individually process all of this without just feeling completely overwhelmed by the scale of it?
And that is explicitly addressed in the final source document, the LMOS version 2.0 instruction on cognitive cooling.
Cognitive cooling.
Yeah. The stated goal of this deep dive and of engaging with these systems frameworks at all is not to give you a definitive crystal ball prediction of the future. It is not to hype you up with evangelism about AI utopias, nor is it to drag you into a paralyzing spiral of doom narratives.
Right. The instruction literally says the objective is to maintain reobservability, to keep the cognitive loop open.
In an era where immense financial gravity is attempting to lock in the future at high speed, the most vital skill a person can possess is cognitive cooling. It is the ability to look at these structural pressures, to see the highway being built in the desert without immediately jumping to a fixed, rigid conclusion about what it means. We are here to observe the gradient, to understand the shear, not to declare how the story ends.
And to ensure we keep that loop open, the sources leave us with some profound, unresolved questions.
They really do. This raises important questions for all of us to monitor going forward. Like, how far can these financial expectations move ahead of physical reality before the sheer friction simply breaks the structural integrity of the system?
Such a good question.
Or does this immense investment actually create the future it imagines through sheer force of will? Or is the imagined future somehow acting as a magnet, attracting the investment toward it?
It is the ultimate chicken and egg scenario, but it's playing out on a multi-trillion-dollar global scale. And that leads me to one final thought I want to leave you with today.
Okay.
We've talked so much about this massive highway being built into the desert, right? This rigid, capitalized expectation of the future that universities, labor markets, and governments are just racing to accommodate.
Yeah, sprinting toward it.
No. But if our entire large-scale societal operational system is actively synchronizing itself to this fast, highly priced, theoretical future, what happens to the unexpected present? What happens to the slow, messy, unpredictable, beautifully inefficient, everyday human reality that simply didn't get included in the market's price tag?
That is the friction point right there. That is the shear zone we all currently have to navigate.
Something to think about the next time you feel like you are spinning at 10,000 RPMs in the mud. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.